The hope of prevailing modernity by way of a quick fix of our vehicle was thoroughly shattered as our time in the Middle America hotel room stretched into week 3. The wrong car part arrived and needed to be returned for the correct one, in transit from several states away and moving very slowly with frequent stops to account for multiple inclement weather incidences. Still, I was questioning what antiquated transit system we were relying on for transport. Slow boats from China are faster, for a fact. My mind strayed to conspiracy theories and more Dark Knight sabotage. What was the lesson this time? With only my son and dogs as my company and my witnesses, I was suspiciously beginning to think that the answer, or the blame, must lie with them. Our world had shrunk to the size of the motel room, punctuated only by long walks through hills, where sagebrush scraped at our pants and wind chapped our faces until we looked like forgotten relics of ourselves. There were 3 TV channels of local public broadcasting that seemed to mourn its own monotony. The motel's faded carpet smelled of dust and cigarette smoke to regret. The popcorn detailing on the ceiling was so pronounced so as to look like stalactites. Plato's cave. The once white walls were now yellowed, which complemented the aged, dingy drabness of the bedspreads and carpeting. Less a design choice and more of a consequence of surrender. Out here in the high desert of Wyoming, time felt stubborn. Days lingered in stale air, and nights were too quiet save for the occasional truck barreling down the highway or the muted conversations from one of the neighboring motel rooms. After weeks, I've had many neighbors. With nothing but time and tension, my son and I kept busy shadowboxing each other's projections. He would sigh heavily at my remarks, stretching out his exasperation like it was something physical he could hurl at me. I'd snap back, then regret it. The only thing that seemed to break the cycle was the bathtub, my only sanctuary. I scalded my bones there daily, boiling my muscles until they melted and molded to the sides of the tub. Even then, I still found myself barking reminders from behind the bathroom door about dishes, homework, or whatever petty directives spilled out of my overwhelmed mind. I parented, often, more out of boredom than necessity. I bullied him for a similar reason, skirting the line of abuse with the many snowball fights I forced my son to engage in by way of antagonism and instigation. His yelp of outrage was always followed by a determined assault, and we'd end up breathless and soaked in ice melt, laughing harder than we had in days. Sometimes it was the closest thing we had to warmth, camaraderie, and friendship. I knew that God had not forgotten us, since the local church whose charity we were recipients of kept covering the bill of our motel stay, negotiated the pilgrimage of the car part, and supplied us with gift cards to cover other essentials. They directed us to the soup kitchen for warm meals and provided sundries and snacks that we could take back to our motel room, even helped us with dog food, which showed the breadth of their compassion and God's grace and mercy. Their kindness felt like a flicker of light in the otherwise dim monotony of our days, and was a reminder that I was divinely loved and protected. I have been thinking about my dad more now than I had since my spiritual awakening occurred, or rather started. I kept asking myself what he would do or say in these moments. He would tell me to cleave to Christ. Exactly that. Cleave to Christ. I thought about all the biblical parables where the success of God's chosen ones were predicated upon their ability to cleave to Christ and endure. I imagine my wilderness and all it entails as a very literal manifestation of its biblical equivalent, whether metaphorical or figurative. I am an Israelite wandering in the wilderness, surviving on manna and clinging to promises of deliverance. I am Moses meeting God at the burning bush, that is the entangled sagebrush in the vast fields behind the motel, where I too am Elijah, hearing God's still small voice. I am John the Baptist crying out to prepare a way for Christ, as I am Jesus Christ himself, fasting on microwave popcorn and apples, thwarting the many temptations of the devil. Temptations that urge me to disappear into a bottle of booze or to dissipate into a puff of marijuana smoke to pass the time. Our motel room is my desert. The scalding bathtub water, my pillar of fire, my stubborn prayers like smoke curling into the sky. I wonder if God's grace will continue to cover us once we are back on the road, or if his mercy is confined to this dusty oasis.